From The Confident Mother, and tonight I'm really excited because we're going to be talking about how to balance work, life, family and everything. And I know for a lot of mums it's a really tough challenge. So tonight what I'm going to do is to share 3 of my favourite ways to confidently balance work and life, and these are all from my free resource, which you can go over to my website at theconfidentmother.co.uk and download 7 ideas on how to balance work and life more confidently. So, and if you're looking for more practical time-saving tips, I wrote a brilliant article about that this week, and that's over my blog post where we talked about slow cookers and Trello and all sorts of lovely things. If you want some more practical time-saving tips, then I suggest you head on over to my website to read that blog. But so 3 time-saving tips. So about just over a year ago, I surveyed about 200 ambitious women about the challenges that they faced in the workplace. Now, I was kind of expecting that work-life balance would be one of those challenges, but I have to say I was blown away because 75% of the women that responded said that work-life balance was the biggest problem, the biggest challenge for them. Which I knew it was a big thing, but I didn't realise it was such an issue. So today I'd like to share 3 of my ideas that really work. And the first thing for me is you've just got to learn how to say no. Say no first and then figure out whether or not actually you want to say yes. But if you start off by saying no, I think it's so important to not overcommit and say no without feeling guilty about saying no. I think every time we say no, the way that this works for me is if I say yes to something, it means I'm saying no to something else. So if I say yes to staying late in the office tonight, it means I'm saying no to being there for bedtime story. Well, my girls are a bit older now, so bedtime story isn't really a thing. They'd be a bit, oh, mummy, what are you doing? But, it means that if I say yes to staying late in the office, I'm saying no to helping my girls with their German homework or with their maths revision. If I say yes to doing something extra for the PTA or getting involved in another role on my entity committee, then I'm probably saying no to something else. And often what I'm saying no to is doing something for me. So when I work late, it means I don't go running, and running and exercise and activity is really important. And that's what I'm saying no to. So even when you're saying yes, you are actually saying no to something. So I think it's really important to be clear about what you're saying no to and what you're saying yes to, and say no to things without feeling guilty about it. So start with no, so that you don't overcommit, so you get really clear on your boundaries. And when you've got that real clarity on where your boundaries lie, it makes it a lot easier to be flexible about those boundaries. But if you're not really clear where those boundaries lie in the first place, then it makes it easier for other people to perhaps take advantage of you, and for your kindness and your generosity and your wanting to please people to take you down the wrong direction and to use up time that you could be using on you or your family, or doing whatever it is that you want to do. So that's my first thing. It's really about saying no, so that you don't overcommit, so that you're realistic with what you can do and what you can fit in, and getting those boundaries really clear, so that so that you can do the things that you want to say yes to, and not the things that you feel like you ought to say yes to. So that's idea number 1. It's really about learning to say no and not feeling guilty about saying no. So idea number 2 for me is, I already mentioned just now about running and taking care of myself. And one of the things that I'm always talking to my clients about, it's so important to take care of you, to take care of number 1 first, so that everything that you do works for you. This is so important for your work-life balance, to look after yourself. It's so easy to get swept up in doing stuff for school, for the PTA, for whoever you volunteer for doing extra things at work. And then you find you're so exhausted that you don't make the time to do something for yourself. And for me, we take on so much. As mothers, we take on so much. I think it's really important to show yourself the same level of compassion and kindness that you would show to others. You know, ask for help is one of the ways that you can show kindness to yourself, because you don't have to do everything. Tell people what support you would like. Tell people what help you would like. And do nice things for yourself. You know, and for you, that might be a nice long soak in the bath. It might be, so one of the tips that I shared in my blog earlier this week was doing something like meditation and using the Headspace app. So taking 10-15 minutes for yourself every day to do meditation or mindfulness practice, or going for a nice walk, or doing, you know, one of the things I like to do at the weekends to kind of declutter my brain and relax and be nice to myself is I love doing colouring in. I love running as well. We dog sit, so for me, having the dog stay is a brilliant way of getting out there and getting active and looking after myself at the same time. And I think that's one of the things that's really important, is to look after yourself so that everything else you do works for you. And when I say look after yourself, I mean looking after yourself physically, mentally, but just being nice to yourself, being kind, and showing yourself the same compassion that you would show to friends or family or other mums that you know. So that was number 2, was all about showing kindness and taking care of yourself first. And then the last thing that I wanted to talk about this evening is about focusing on one thing at a time. Oh my goodness, I know I'm so guilty of this one. I know I try and fit too much in, and in fact I had my City Conversations networking event last night, and in fact a couple of the women said to me, I don't know how you do it, Sherry, how do you fit so much in? And I fit so much in because I try my best not to overcommit, is the first thing. I do try and take care of myself, but actually it's by really focusing on one thing at a time. So I don't try and multitask, because actually I know it's impossible. We know it's impossible. We know that our brain can only process one thing at a time. And you, I'm sure, have had conversations with people where you're talking away and you're chatting and you're telling them what's happened and you're explaining a situation you've been in, or you're perhaps just, you know, talking something through because it's bothering you, or you're stuck, or you're challenged. You can tell when they're not listening to you properly, can't you? You can just tell that they're not really paying proper attention. And so when I say focus on one thing at a time, this is important at work, but it's also really important when you're with family or with friends, because children can tell when you're not being fully present. And I think it's really important to be fully present when you're at work, fully present when you're at home. And when I say fully present, I mean being really focused and just trying to do one thing at a time. So not trying to do bedtime story at the same time as you're checking your emails on your phone, not trying to do paperwork and invoices at the same time as you're trying to help your daughters do their German homework. It's about not trying to be on a conference call at the same time as reading a report. You honestly just cannot process more than one thing at a time. Even computers. So lots of you know that my background is in IT and technology. Even computers cannot process, they cannot multitask. It looks like they're multitasking, but what they're actually doing is they're processing one task at a time, but they're doing it really, really fast, really quickly, so it looks like they're multi-processing. So when I'm browsing on Facebook, and at the same time I've sent something to print, and at the same time I'm editing a photo, it looks like my computer is doing all of these things at once, but it's not. It's just going boom, 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 really quickly, so quickly we can't see it. But we are human beings and we can't process that fast. And actually, when you focus on one thing at a time, it means your brain is not having to jump from one thing to the next and back again, which means that when you do focus on one thing at a time, the quality of your thinking, the quality of your decision making, the quality of your creativity will be so much better. So it's really important to focus on one thing at a time, because that way you'll get more done, and what you get done will be better, will be better quality. Because actually less is more. One of the really good books that I've read that's really helped me in my business is by Gary Keller and Jay Papasan, and it's called The One Thing. And it really is about figuring out what your one thing in life is, but just focusing on that one thing. But I'm talking about doing one thing at a time, so not trying to multitask and juggle. So that's my third thing for you tonight, is about focusing on just one thing at a time, because we're not computers and we can't multitask. And when we do try and multitask, it goes wrong. And people can tell when we're not listening, our children can tell, our partners can tell. You might think that you're reading a report and the rest of the people on the conference call can't tell, but they can. Because then when they come to you and say, Sherry, what do you think? And I'm going, sorry, could you just repeat that question? Everybody else on the call knows I wasn't listening properly. So focus on one thing at a time, because you'll get much, much better results at work, and you'll have a much happier family at home as well. So those are my three things for you tonight, on how you can do the juggle that we're all trying to play with and experiment with and get right. We're all trying to do this work-life balance juggling act. So those are my three tips for you. It's about not overcommitting and saying no to start off with, really taking good care of yourself first, because if you look after yourself, you'll be less stressed, you'll be more confident, you'll be a better person because you won't be so snappy. And then the final thing was about focusing on one thing at a time, so that because that way you do get more done, and what you get done is better quality. I've got loads more ideas over my website at theconfidentmother.co.uk, and if you want the full handout that I've got available on my website, and it is one of my most popular handouts actually, is 7 ideas to confidently balance work and life. And it's those 3 ideas are in there, but I've got 4 more ideas in there for you as well. So if you go over to theconfidentmother.co.uk and then go to the resources page, and you can just download it from there. So it's free, there's no charge or anything like that. And if you feel that you're struggling with work-life balance, then pop your question below this link, and I'll come back to you, or you can email me. But do go and get yourself that handout, because I think you'll find that really helpful. So that's all for tonight. I've loved talking to you, and see you again soon.